Hey guys, I hope that you guys are doing amazing wherever you are in the world. My name is Boom Shikha and I welcome you to my channel and to all of the different videos I've been doing on INFJ stuff and on other stuff. I hope you guys are learning from them and hopefully they're helping you guys become the best version of yourself as much as possible. In this video, I wanted to speak to you guys about how INFJs are really good at compartmentalizing their emotions and their different personalities or their different characteristics in society and also on their own. I'll start off with a brief example. I think I've used this example before, but it's such an interesting one for me, so I'm going to use it again. A year back, I think, a few months back, last year basically, my father was not well, and I got a phone call from my parents. I was in Thailand at the time, on one of the islands down south. I was working at a yoga resort, and I got a phone call from my parents saying, that one of them is not doing that well, and if possible, it would be nice if I came over to Toronto, Canada, and visited them for a bit. So I received this phone call, and of course, in the moment, as you guys probably have experience with that, when you hear someone that you love, especially a family member is ill or unwell, and you're so far away from them, all of a sudden you get these heart palpitations and all of this fear and all of this stuff going on in your belly that you're like, oh my God. So obviously I went through a little bit of that, a few moments of that feeling that, okay, I need to get back as soon as possible and I need to take care of them and I need to be next to them. So I went through that phase of having those negative emotions for a few seconds, maybe a few minutes at most. I would say maybe 5-10 minutes. And then I got into action mode because I was like, all right, if I have to go visit them, then I have to talk to my boss and tell him that I'm leaving. I have to quit my job. I have to pack all my stuff. I have to book my ticket. I have to do all of these different things. And so I realized as I was sitting there that I can't spend all of my time being upset or being negative about it or worrying about it or being doubtful or anxious about the situation, because I don't have time for all that, right? I need to figure out all of these logistical things. And so if I really need to get back home right now as soon as possible, I need to take care of all that stuff. And so as soon as I realized that, obviously, I stopped worrying, I stopped thinking about all that stuff, and I decided I'll have time later to worry about all that stuff. I'll have time later on the plane when I have a 14-hour journey or a 24-hour journey back home, then I can think about all this stuff. I can think about it when I'm sleeping at night, or I can think about it some other time. But right now, in this moment in time, the main priority for me was to take care of the logistics of me going back home. Now that is the kind of compartmentalizing I'm talking about. And this is just one example of many that I have in my life where I've had things happen to me where all of a sudden I'm like, all right, cool. Let's deal with our important issues right now and let's compartmentalize the negative emotions or all the other emotions, and we can deal with that later when there is a more appropriate time for it. Now, of course, when I went on to speak to my family, my boss about it and my colleagues about the fact that I have to leave, a lot of them were saying, you don't seem that upset about the fact that your parent is not well, or you don't seem that upset about the fact that, you have to go back home, or you seem pretty normal, you seem pretty upbeat and all, as you were yesterday. And I've had this happen to me many times when, I'll have something really terrible happen in my life and I'll go and tell my friends that something like this has happened, and they will be completely flabbergasted that something like that happened to me because I did not portray any kind of negativity, or I did not let them sense any kind of negativity from my emotions or my feelings or my heart or my aura or my energy. Everything was perfectly fine. I was able to keep a stability in the sense of the fact that it seemed exactly the same as nothing has happened. I was exactly the same as if everything was perfectly fine. And that's what INFJs do. We're really good, as I said, at compartmentalizing different emotions and different personas of ourselves, because we know that there's always a better place and time to deal with all these emotions. When something negative happens to us, sometimes that's not necessarily the best time to deal with that particular emotion. For example, if something negative is happening and you're surrounded by people who are panicking and who are going into all of these crazy anxiety modes, then the best thing for us to do in that moment in time is to be calm and to deal with all those people properly, rather than ourselves going into panic mode and resulting in extra panic, which we really, really don't need, right? And so we're always kind of thinking about the most appropriate time to feel the emotions that we are feeling in general, or to have the right time and space to feel the emotions that we're going to feel anyways. It's not that we don't feel, but that's the reason why a lot of us as INFJs come across as being either fake or perhaps emotionless or robotic or automatons, because we don't actually feel emotions perhaps exactly at the time as everyone else is supposed to feel them. For example, if someone else was, just got the news that perhaps their parent was sick, or their dog had died, or their grandparent had died, they would feel that emotions right there and then. They would start crying and they would need help, and someone would need to hug them, and they'd get really emotional, and they would deal with it right there and then. They're not going to wait until a time that's a better time for them to deal with it. They're just going to cry, they're going to let it all out, and we're going to support them, and that's how it's going to be. Whereas I could be sitting there and I could get a phone call from my friend or my parents saying something bad has happened, and I'd put down the phone and I'd pretend like nothing has happened. I'd pretend like everything was fine, and I'd go on with the conversation, or I'd go on with the socialization as if everything was normal, and then I'd go back home, or I'd go back to a safe space where I felt comfortable dealing with that particular emotion, and then I'd think about it, and then maybe I'd feel it, and then I'd journal about it, and then reflect on it, and all of that. But only when I was in a safe enough space for me to deal with it on my own, right? That's why as I said, we come across as being a little bit fake, perhaps, because whenever my friends, when I told them that my parent wasn't well and that I had to go back home, a lot of them said exactly the same thing. They're like, don't you care about him? Don't you care about the fact that he's ill? Or they would say things like, you don't really seem too upset about the fact that this has happened. You seem pretty normal about it. And I think to myself, why would I show people, strangers or acquaintances or people around me, my emotions when I can deal with it on my own? Why would I need to be surrounded by people who are empathizing with me and showing me pity or sympathy when I don't really need all that bullshit? I don't need all of those emotions from you. I don't need to add on to the emotional garbage or the emotional baggage that I already have. I already have a lot of anxiety and doubt and all that stuff because of the news that I've received. I don't need you to add to it by feeling sad for me. I want everyone to pretend like everything is fine, everything is normal, and then I want to deal with it on my own. I want to go back home into my safe space, sit down by myself and deal with those emotions on my own, because I find that for myself specifically, that's the best way for me to deal with emotions. I don't do well when I have to deal with them surrounded by people, because when I'm surrounded by people as an empath, as an INFJ, what we're doing is that we're kind of taking on the emotions and feelings of the people around us. And so we're not really truly feeling our own feelings. And so if something bad does happen and you're talking to someone about it, you're taking on their emotions and their life experiences and their ideas about that specific thing. It's not your own emotion. You're not specifically dealing with your own emotion at the time, being an empath, right? And so really being an empath, best way for us to deal with our emotions, especially the negative ones, I find, is to go back into your safe space and to deal with it on your own. Unless you have someone in your life that you really trust, perhaps a partner or a significant other that you can deal with and who can go back and forth with you during these emotional times. Unless you have something like that, I find the best way for me to deal with my emotions and to compartmentalize it is to deal with it in my own safe space. Again, that doesn't mean that I don't feel emotions. It doesn't mean that we are robots. It doesn't mean that we're not gonna feel negative emotions at all. If something negative does happen, we do feel it, but we have the, emotional intelligence to realize that there is the right place and time to feel certain emotions and to deal with them, and then the wrong place and time to deal with it. Another example, I received some bad news about a friend. She'd committed suicide, and I was about to go into a social event right before I got this call by the fact that my friend had done that. And I had to go to the social event because I had promised that I'd go, and I decided, there's no point in me sitting at home and thinking about it. She's already gone. There's nothing I can do about it. It's better for me to go out into the world and be social and perhaps be surrounded by people. And so I did. I went out to this event. It was a very social event. It was some kind of blind dating kind of event, something to do with social networking. And so I went, I spoke to a bunch of people, we had a lot of conversations, I exchanged a bunch of contact information with these individuals. They were really smart, intelligent people, and it was really nice to interact with them. At the end of it, a couple of my friends who were running the event, they were there and they're like, how are you doing? How's the event? Did you like it? I'm like, yeah, I loved it. It was great. And they're like, is everything all right? And I'm like, yeah, everything's perfect. And you seem very happy. And I was like, yeah, I'm really happy. Everything's perfect. Everything's awesome. And then we went out to dinner after, just a couple of us, my friends and I. And I told them, I just received news before I came to the event that my friend had committed suicide. And they were flabbergasted, as I said before. They were just surprised that I had not given any indication of the fact that I had received such news right before this event. There was no change in my mannerisms or in the way I dealt with the people around me. It was completely exactly the same as I would if I hadn't received the news. And that is what I mean about compartmentalizing our emotions. We're really good at kind of switching them off or putting them away, as if we're putting them away in the back burner for a little bit, just to kind of let it simmer. And then we'll come back to it, and we know we'll come back to it, but for right now it's not the right time for us to deal with it. And so we're able to do that really easily. Again, I hope this makes sense. I hope I've been able to explain myself to you guys. It is a weird topic to speak about sometimes because it does make us seem like robots, terrible, cold, emotionless robots. And so that's the reason I wanted to do this video, is to make you guys realize we're not cold and we do feel emotions. We just have a different way of dealing with it because of our emotional intelligence. We know when to deal with it, how to deal with it, what's the right time for it, what's the wrong time for it, etc. Again, if you have any questions at all, please message me anytime. All my contact information is in the description below, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.